Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. It's a real treat for you all today. Alongside myself and Henry Hill, we are joined by Jack Collins, presenter and broadcaster, host of the Ranks FC podcast, formerly BR Football Ranks, host of the Europa League Breakfast Show and the Fulhamish Pod 2, and my old mate from university, which many people might not know about as well. Jack, welcome to Continental Club. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Thank you so much for having me on. I love this show. It's a real pleasure, a real honour to be on, and to finally link up things. It's something we've been looking for a while. So I'm glad we finally got to do it.
Absolutely, a real treat for me personally. Henry, you must be delighted. We've got Fulham royalty on the show.
I can't believe it. This is great. I've been off of the show for 2 weeks. You've been getting other good guests in, like Zach Lowry. That was brilliant when you got him in. And I feel like you've rolled the red carpet out for me as I made my grand return with one of the kind of premier Fulham football fans of the moment right now. No, a lot of respect to Jack and everything he's achieved certainly over the last few years. And yeah, I'm super excited to talk all things European football with him because, if there's one guy that knows what he's talking about when it comes to the continental scene, I believe it is Jack.
No, thank you. You're too kind, Emery. Too kind.
Absolutely. So to give you a bit of background on today's show, we did our European predictions with Zach Lowy a few weeks ago, but we didn't manage to do La Liga because Messi then left, which rendered it all quite out of date. So we actually cut that out of the show. So today we are talking all things La Liga. But before we get into that, we've got our comment of the week. This is a new section at the start of Continental Club where we are asking for the most liked comment on one of our YouTube videos, which will get a shout out on today's show in front of the audience of roughly about 50,000 people. And this week it was a comment on Eurotransfer Talk about Ronaldo returning, and it was by It's Me. You can see it on screen right now. And it was, "This transfer window has been insane. Couldn't agree more, It's Me. Hopefully there is more to come in the remaining days of the window." Jack, in La Liga, it's mainly about the departures at the top of the table so far in terms of from Barcelona and Real Madrid. But I wanted to maybe talk about Atletico Madrid because I feel like they've gone slightly under the radar. Obviously the reigning champions. Do you think they're the favourites again?
I think they have to be. It's one of those ones where you look at everyone else and either you feel like they've stood still or that they've regressed in some way. And you look at Atleti and, bringing in Rodrigo de Paul, who I think is probably, arguably the headline signing in La Liga right now. And when you look at that and you think, okay, what you've added there into midfield is a player who not only is, a creative gem and someone who's incredibly talented, incredibly good at, bringing the ball forward in terms of carries, bringing the ball forward in terms of progressive passes, bringing the ball forward in terms of dribbles and goal scoring opportunities, but also someone who you think is going to immediately fit into everything Simeone wants, right? It's sometimes you give a creative player to Simeone and, you only have to look at João Felix to think, I'm not 100% sure how this is going to work. And you think that sometimes creative players get a little bit lost in Simeone's systems. And then you look at the power and you go, right, okay, this is a player that Simeone will love from moment dot. And, his work rate, his energy, I think we saw what he brought to that Argentina team across the course of the Copa America, and the fact that, his runs in the middle basically freed up Leo Messi, him and Nico Gonzalez on the other wing, obviously. But they sort of freed up Leo Messi to basically become his best self. And so I think when you add that energy into an already excellent Atleti side, I'd imagine that there's few people who can't look at this and go, well, they're stronger than they were last year. Everybody else has stuck or regressed. And therefore, I find it very difficult to not make Atleti favourites at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a fair shout. And before we move on to Real Madrid and Barcelona, I want to get Henry's opinion on them in a second. But Jack, we've seen in the last few days Dusan Vlahovic linked quite heavily with Atletico. Obviously, Fiorentina is one of your sort of, clubs that you also have a special place in your heart. What do you make of this potential move for Atleti?
I think it's another one that sort of makes sense. I think Vlahovic, you sort of put into this category of forward that kind of does it all. And right, I think Haaland is obviously the kind of gem in the crown of this type of forward, right? He is the all action, scoring goals, can run in behind, can be a target man, scores headers, scores on the floor, pace, all of it in rolled into one. And the kind of way I've been describing Vlahovic, and this is no disrespect whatsoever, is kind of a budget Haaland. He basically does all of these things, but not quite to the same level. Now, that isn't being harsh, I don't think. That's a high compliment as far as I'm concerned. Romelu Lukaku is a bit like this as well, has all of these traits that can push forward, can do kind of the old school number 9 stuff, but also able to get on the shoulder, get in behind. And I think Vlahovic is very similar. And I think that at this point, we're looking at a player who who's a real talent and someone that I think we're going to be talking about in the best number 9s in the world for the next 5-6 years once he finally reaches that top bracket. But that said, I do think it might be a year too early for Vlahovic, and I don't just say that because I'd like him to stay at Fiorentina. I really do think that one more year kind of developing this craft. He was very raw, very rough. I saw him first about a year and a half, or 2 years ago now, when in America in the International Champions Cup, when he was playing for Fiorentina there. And he came off the bench and he was kind of all action, and we all sat up and were like, okay, Vlahovic is quite good. And we spent some time with Fiorentina in training, and you're watching him and you're like, okay, he could be really good. He's got all the raw attributes to be exceptional. I don't think he's quite as polished as he needs to be yet. But then again, we just talked about Atleti's desire for work rate, desire to have players in there who will fit the mold in some ways. And I do think he would do that. I think he would be able to adapt his game at this point to be what Simeone wants. What I'm not sure about is whether he'll get the minutes he needs to fully, blossom into the striker that I think he can be if he's playing second fiddle to Luis Suarez.
Yeah, I mean, Luis Suarez is 34 now. I think Moussa Dembele had that second fiddle thing at the back end of last year as well and barely got really a look in. It was a pretty forgettable loan spell. I think it was 7 appearances, 0 goals as well. They're expecting more from João Felix and Angel Correa as well, who started really well against Celta Vigo, Correa that is, with 2 goals there. But they'll be looking for more backup for Suarez this term. So Vlahovic, maybe slightly overpriced. Jack's got his concerns that he may not be quite ready, but we'll see what happens there. 70 million euros is a hell of a lot of money in this market as well. Henry, let's move over to Real Madrid, because we started the year, started the summer, I should say, being like Zidane's left, Ramos has left, Varane's going to go, etc. And it all looked like it was all slightly, not necessarily falling apart at Real Madrid, but the start of a new era. Obviously, that's been completely overshadowed by the Barcelona and Messi situation. So where do you think we are with Real Madrid?
I'm really intrigued by Real Madrid and certainly what they're going to bring to the table this season. As you said, a real fundamental sort of shake-up, certainly in their back line there, which is a huge risk. Ramos, Varane, obviously they brought in David Alaba. But over the past few seasons, I think, while they've been relying on Benzema for the goals, it's been their strength in defence that's really carried them through. They only conceded 25 and 28 league goals in the last 2 seasons. So to sort of rupture that part of the side going forward makes me a little bit nervous. However, it does look like Ancelotti is going to try and sort of breathe back into life a bit more of an attacking force. And we saw that in that opening game against Alaves, that 4-1 win away. 19 shots in that game with 7 on target. Clearly he's trying to unleash some of those attackers. We've seen Gareth Bale back in the fold. Actually had a really positive first half. A couple of good efforts, sort of some quiet praise from the Real Madrid fans on Twitter, I think, which you don't often see when it comes to Gareth Bale there. And let's not forget, they lost to Rangers in pre-season. They drew with AC Milan as well, 0-0. So there was certainly some nerves going into this fixture to see what could happen. They've still got some quality in that side. The likes of, if Asensio can step up, he had a very good Olympic Games. Vinicius, we want to see more from him. Hazard, is this going to be the year we get some kind of value out of the colossalness of that move that took place? And Rodrigo as well. I'm a big fan of Rodrigo. Hopefully this is the season 2 where he's going to really make a name for himself. And, Carlo Ancelotti knows what he's doing at the Bernabeu. And in that regard, they are in decent hands going forward into the campaign. I'm reading a lot about the way they've managed themselves financially off the pitch. Actually, Fiorentina, Perez has been quite sensible in how he's gone about sort of sorting out the books when it comes to them, which is why Barcelona are in such a sort of heavy predicament in relation to Real Madrid right now. And, they've been busy recouping sort of money over the years and player sales. We've just seen Martin Odegaard leave as well. And these are all kind of big risks, because the thing that does concern me is their depth going forward. I feel like a few injuries could really rupture this Real Madrid side. And I'm not sure, we've got Jovic on the bench against Alaves. Is he really ready to step up in case something goes wrong with Benzema? That is my main concern with this Real Madrid side, is that they maybe don't have, throughout a sort of 38-game season, the depth to kind of compete with Atletico Madrid, or even maybe some of the other younger challengers coming through as well. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But a really positive start against Alaves. And like I said, I'm quietly optimistic that it's not all doom and gloom in Madrid, and Los Blancos can actually pull through a pretty exciting campaign.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting, to say the least. I think they've kind of risked quite a lot with all these sales of their young talents. You know, the Hakimis, Teo Hernandez, Reguilon, now Odegaard as well. And they've put all their eggs in this Mbappe basket, which is it's a beautiful basket. I think it will work spectacularly well at Real Madrid if they manage to get him. But now Messi's gone to PSG. If they can pull out the finances to secure Mbappe's long-term future as well, which being owned by a state, you know, they probably can. Is he really going to want to join Real Madrid at the end of this year when it's probably another transitional year? They're unlikely to win La Liga. They're unlikely to win the Champions League, whereas PSG probably go into the Champions League as the top 1 or 2 favourites. So it feels like a slightly risky strategy. We've got to go on to the third team in this title race in Barcelona. I think many people would question whether they could really be in the title race, but I'm not too down on Barcelona, to be totally honest. Obviously, they finished 7 points off Atleti last term. They've lost Messi, which, you know, we've covered on numerous shows. We don't need to go into that all again. But they started very well against Real Sociedad, it has to be said. 4-2. It could have been more comfortable as well. Memphis Depay played very well. I mean, he made 1 tackle, 4 key passes, 2 dribbles, 1 assist for that Gerard Piqué goal, who's had a hell of a 2 weeks as well. Martin Braithwaite even looked pretty effective as well. Frankie de Jong was excellent. So it feels like they're not in too bad a state right now. Obviously, Sergio Aguero's knee injury has left them a little bit short in terms of out-and-out number 9s. But I'm looking forward to seeing how Emerson does as a competition for Serginho Dest, Jordi Alba, whether you can continue that fantastic form from the back end of last year. My main issues with them are probably in their central defence now, and whether Pedri can carry on playing, you know, a game every 3 days for the rest of his life, which is a little bit of a worry. Jack, I was listening to Ranks FC the other day, which is the podcast that Jack hosts, as I said at the top of the show. Go check it out, by the way. It's absolutely brilliant. And you were quite hot on Barcelona potentially getting in there for a title win.
Yeah, I really do. I know I said at the top that Atleti are favourites, and I think they should remain favourites. That's probably something to point out. But I actually think that this Barcelona side can win the league. And I think what we'll see is, I should caveat this as a start, because there's a lot of people that will hear this and go, is he saying that they're better without Messi? I am fundamentally not saying that. Like, no team in the world would be better having lost Leo Messi. However, I will say that I think that they've diversified their attack a little bit more. And I think that in the space where Messi vacates, I think Griezmann will have a little bit more room to play. I think that Memphis will enjoy the fact that he has basically been forced into the role of poster boy. I think he will love that. I tweeted at the time that I thought that that Memphis would have been in Laporta's office the day that Messi left saying, can I have the 10 shirt? Because that's the kind of character that Memphis is. And actually, I think that in a predicament like Barcelona's right now, it's not a terrible thing to have. A player who wants it, who wants the pressure, who says, yeah, give it to me, put it all on me, and I will lift this club back up. Now, whether he's good enough to do that on his own is one question. Whether he's good enough to do that with Antoine Griezmann next to him, and we saw them dovetailing really, really nicely, especially in the Joan Gamper Trophy against Juventus. They were really, really good as a pair. And I have a funny feeling that, because, as you said, the centre-back is the real worry here in many ways. I think that Ronaldo Araujo is probably the only centre-back here that I think is of any real, like, proper top quality level anymore. I think he's going to go on and be an absolutely world-class centre-back. I think Eric Garcia is a good footballer who lacks the physicality to really stand up in a two-man defence. And I love PK, and everybody loves PK, and him scoring was a wonderful moment for the club, but I am starting to worry that he's over the hill. So there's this kind of element that if they do go back to a 3-5-2, which I think that Koeman will eventually resort to, because I think it best gives him the kind of tools to play with. Just stick Memphis and Griezmann up top together, let them just dovetail off each other. The three behind them are Frankie de Jong, Pedri, and Sergio Busquets. Okay, fair enough.
It's unreal.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably the best midfield in the world. And then, kind of basically trying to adapt your centre-back situation that you can cover for the physical weaknesses of having like a Longley or having Eric Garcia in there. You have that moment by covering that by having Ronald as your kind of main physical centre-back. You maybe cover the lack of pace for Gerard Piqué by going to 3 at the back. And it also unleashes Jordi Alba down one wing and either Serginho Dest or Emerson, who I think is going to be a revelation on that right-hand side, down the other. And when that sort of works, it feels on paper like there's going to be few teams who can stop Barcelona. And I think we saw that going forward at the weekend in what should have been a really difficult test against Real Sociedad. And it didn't feel like that. Obviously, it pulled back and it became a little bit nervy at the end. But on the whole, Barcelona were the much better side for 89 minutes of that game. And that's exactly all it was. And if they can continue that kind of form, I do worry about teams coming up against them and just getting blown away. Sort of, they won't keep many clean sheets, but I reckon they'll win a lot of games 5-1, 4-1. So we'll see how they go.
It's certainly going to be entertaining. Okay, Henry, Jack is going Barcelona. Whether they can or will, I'm not quite sure what he was deciding in the end there. Henry,
They can.
Henry, who is going to win La Liga before we move on?
Oh, yeah, just echo everything Jack's just said about that sort of defence. I've got nightmares of Eric Garcia going up against Mikel Antonio in that West Ham game last year. We got absolutely dominated. But yeah, I'm going to go for, I think Atletico Madrid, if they can get another striker through the door. We saw Carrasco and Angel Correa sort of starting up top in their previous fixture there. Excellent 2-1 win away at Celta Vigo. It should be noted. I love Eduardo Coudet and what he's done with that Celta Vigo side. Really transformed them. Excited to see what they can do this year. And for Atletico to go away first game of the season and claim a win, I think that's really, it sets the tempo for what I think could be another sort of grueling Simeone title win. If they can get another striker through the door to give Suarez, 34-year-old Suarez, a bit of help up top, then yeah, I think Atletico for the title. But Barcelona, as you say, do not underestimate them. I think they're going to have the bit between their teeth this year. They've got something to prove about Messi. They've got so many quality players that almost been forgotten about, but beneath the Messi saga, the Frankie de Jongs, etc. So yeah, watch out for them. But for me, Atletico for the victory.
Yeah, I think it's looking quite good for Atleti compared to a month ago as well. Obviously, Vlahovic is being linked. They haven't lost Kieran Trippier as well. They haven't lost Sal Niguez. I mean, both of them, Sal Niguez, not such a crucial member of that side last year, but Kieran Trippier was absolutely essential pre his betting ban, and after that ban as well, in terms of seeing them over the line. So I'm going with Atleti as well. Right, Jack, we are Zach this for every league we covered last week. Who is your signing of the summer in terms of La Liga?
Okay, I'm going to go to Betis, as I usually do.
Nice.
And I'm going to go for Rui Silva in goal, who was at Granada last year, who's absolutely sensational. And Sam Tai, who I do the podcast with, is a Granada fan. He hated this transfer.
Granada, doesn't he? Yeah.
He hated this transfer more than anything on earth. The fact that we were picking, the jewel in the Granada crown out and saying, thanks very much, we'll have him on a free as well. So I looked at that and I thought, yeah, I'm going to absolutely deal into that. And I really like the fact that Claudio Bravo's come in. He's kind of steadied the ship. Betis are really sort of all over the place for a goalkeeper since Pau Lopez left for Roma a couple of years ago. Claudio Bravo settled the ship a little bit, which is saying something because I don't think anyone's ever been settled with Claudio Bravo in goal. But he did really sort of show some quality and class behind that Betis side. But I think Rui Silva is a massive upgrade and a lot younger model. It gives Betis something to really hang on to for the next couple of seasons. And I'm really excited about what he can bring to the table. So yeah, Rui Silva at Betis for me.
Fair enough. Good shout. I was quite intrigued by one of the signings today for Villarreal, Henry. Arnaut Danjuma from Bournemouth. He's gone for a hell of a lot of money. Did you see this?
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of ticket that you're going to get for a quality championship player this at the moment, isn't it? That's the kind of amazing situation that we're in. And Danjuma, 17 goals and 7 assists last season for Bournemouth. I think he's really shown his excellence after sort of a tricky initial introduction to life in English football. He's come on so strong. He's such an exciting player. I remember watching him in the playoffs. He was excellent then. And you always got the sense that Bournemouth were going to lose one of their star players down the line, either David Brooks or Danjuma. And it looks like it's Danjuma that has gone to Villarreal. I'm pleased with him. I think he's got that flair which maybe Villarreal need to kick on a little bit. They play sort of, I don't mean to be insulting, but say quite a stubborn style of football. I think a very heavily reliant on sort of Gerard Moreno up top. And I think Danjuma could go there and sort of unlock some defences when maybe their more pragmatic style isn't necessarily working. I mean, I don't know what Jack thinks, but I think this is sort of an appropriate step up for a player of his quality. He was always going to go to the Premier League or a sort of a top 5 division at some point in his career. And I think this is a nice place for him to go to next. I'm excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, Jack, I mean, sorry, as I was about to say, as a big fan of the Championship over the last few years, with Fulham dipping in and out, we've seen Championship talents go on to exceed in the Premier League, etc. Can Danjuma do it in La Liga?
I absolutely think so. Yeah, I think he's the kind of player that will be able to sparkle. And also, and like Henry says, just diversifying that attack a little bit. You know, they were massively reliant on Gerard Moreno, who's one of my favourite players on earth. But also, I think when Chukwueze got injured, you saw Villarreal kind of lose a little bit of their sparkle, their luster, and their ability to change games in an instant. And I know at the end of the season, it felt more like they were focusing everything into the Europa League, which obviously was ultimately a successful campaign. But their La Liga form did, kind of suffer for it. And I do think part of that is that they were a little bit one-dimensional without Chukwueze. And I think we saw that again on Monday night against Granada. Just, they did play, they were the better side. They did kind of probably deserve all 3 points, but couldn't get the ball over the line. And you just kind of hope in those moments for someone to kind of change the game, to break it open. And Chukwueze has been able to do that for them in times. And actually, I think that Danjuma will go in and do something very similar. Talking of Villarreal, the backup, the person I was actually going to say as second was Bouli Dia, who I think is a wonderful player. Yep. Really, really excited about seeing his partnership with Gerard Moreno blossom. Obviously got 14 goals and 1 assist in Liga last year for Reim, 36 games. So I'm excited about seeing that partnership blossom. We've seen strikers really come in and do well alongside Moreno, strikers who I think are of a lower caliber than Bouli Dia is. So I'm excited to see, we saw a glimpse of it already in the Super Cup final with that lovely goal that they put on together. And I think that they're going to go from strength to strength of the partnership. So that's exciting too. Villarreal have signed well. They've signed well.
Yeah, they have. They have indeed. Right. As we've got Jack on, who is a Real Betis fan, a Real Betis aficionado, we're going to talk a bit about Seville and Seville football right now, because a few people are actually tipping Sevilla for maybe a shock entry into the top 3 maybe this year if Real or Barca, one of them, drops off. They obviously finished comfortably 4th last year. They only lost 2 of their final 13 league games, and 77 points that they finished on was their most this century. They've swapped Brian Hill for Eric Lamela, which started very well at the weekend. He scored twice against Rayo Vallecano. Wow. Lucas Zidane, of course, was sent off in that game quite early on. He's the Rayo Vallecano goalkeeper, so it was, a slightly open door for them. I mean, Jack, it might pain you to say it as a Real Betis fan, but what do you think of Sevilla this season under Lopetegui?
Yeah, they're very, very good, aren't they? It's it does hurt me, but it's unfortunately the facts of the matter in this regard. And look, Sevilla, I think were excellent towards the back end of last season, as you say, and really seem to be finding this groove. And I love that Lopetegui has gone from being this kind of laughing stock of kind of the whole way that it ended with the Spanish national team, because he was doing some wonderful things with Spain, and suddenly for it all to fall apart before the World Cup, for them to go into Real Madrid with all of that on his back, and also just ultimately just fail to live up to any expectations whatsoever and kind of drop out of the game for a bit. And his stock was at a very, very low level when Sevilla picked him up, and now we're looking at him again as probably one of the most tactically astute coaches in the game. And I really, really like what he's done with the side. And it's interesting that you talk about Lamela, and I think, look, there's a danger of reading too much into a 3-0 result against, I would suggest, a relegation contender with 10 men. But there is a level that you look at this and think Lamela is the kind of player who, with a run of games in him and someone who, with a little bit more time and space in a slightly more technical league, you think actually might shine. And Sevilla has been a place where Argentinians have shone, over the course of the years. It's been somewhere that's been a happy home for a lot of Argentinian players. And I think that Lamela, in this system, being given a little bit more time to bed in, being given a little bit less pressure right off the bat, and obviously feeling more comfortable with everything around him, I think he will do well this season. They've brought in, obviously, Gonzalo Montiel as well at right back. So now they have the Argentinian fullback pairing of Montiel and Acuna. And that's kind of kicking on. They brought in Augustinson to back up Acuna at left back, which gives them a little bit more depth there. And look, we've seen Monchi come out and say, this is it. This is the year I want to win the title. He's not messing about with the things he's looking at and saying, this is what we are trying to do. It's not, we're here to make up the numbers. We're here to secure our spot as a Champions League team. He's saying that I've signed players who I think will propel us towards a title charge. Now, I think that might be a wee bit beyond them, if I'm being perfectly honest, but I can completely see why people are looking at the top 3 and saying there's holes here, there's gaps. We know that everyone is not as strong. We know that there is a sign of, the big 2 being reeled back into the pack, if you will. And Sevilla, I think, are best placed in order to be the other side that isn't Atleti, who will have a say in this title race. Whether they actually can take it all the way to the line and actually be in with a shout towards the end of the season, I would suggest no. But I think they will have a say one way or the other.
It's interesting you mentioned the Argentinians in that side as well. Obviously, Papu Gomez was playing really well last week, and I didn't actually watch the game, but catching the highlights, he looked full of running, like as his usual creative self, etc. I think he got an assist as well.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, Zach Lowe revealed on Twitter but his quotes about his fallout with Gasperini last year, which got pretty physical over him refusing to swap wings. So go check that out on Zach Lowe's Twitter if you haven't seen that already. Jack, we've got to talk to you about Los Beticos. What are you feeling ahead of this season?
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable. I'm pretty excited about it, and I think that maybe part of this is Betis being in the Europa League, right? And feeling like there is a real chance that Betis can go deep into this competition. I think that the signings, you know, as I said, Rui Silva in goal is a brilliant bit of business, but also the fact that Juan Miranda's been made permanent at left back, and Sabali's been brought in to kind of be the Emerson replacement at right back, and all of this has been kind of done for free. Betis have not signed a player for any money so far. The other big rumours are that Diego Godin is potentially looking at a move to the Villamarín. And
Really?
if
I didn't
not,
see that.
yeah, and if not, then Herman Pezzella, who's the Fiorentina club captain, in a move that I'm not quite sure how I feel about, frankly. But it's one of those where you look at it and you think this is a squad that feels like it's starting to come together. I think Pellegrini's a wonderful manager, and I think we saw last year him really start to put the things together and make it work for someone like Borja Iglesias, who really didn't start well when he came in under Rubi, and it really didn't work for him, even though he was under his old manager. It just, something wasn't clicking. Pellegrini has come in and being like, right, it's okay. You're the main man, you're the 9, and we're going to work to those strengths. And I think that also Betis have this kind of strange thing where there's a couple of players, the likes of Diego Lainez, I think is probably the kind of main culprit here, who's never quite caught fire. And I think that we were all so excited when Lainez came to Europe because of what he'd offered in South America and what he'd offered for Mexico and what he'd kind of done across the course of looking at, you know, in the under-21s championships, in the under-19s championships, and he was electric. And he's never really shown that for Betis. And I do feel that we're getting more and more, well, we're getting closer to Lainez really starting to explode. And if this is the year that he can kind of make his name, that will be like a new signing as well for Betis. And I think that Betis will be okay in terms of going for Europe. In terms of securing another Europa League spot, I think they'll be okay, get finished 5th or 6th. But I also think they can make a deep run in Europe, and that's what I'm really excited about.
Diego Lainez, I like it. One to watch this year. Henry, I saw Jack put on Twitter yesterday that Hector Bellerin should consider going to Real Betis. Is that the sort of club that you reckon is in his sort of stratosphere right now?
Well, apparently he's willing to take a pay cut. I think he just wants to get a bit of consistent game time under his belt. Exactly. If they've got European football. I certainly think this would be a step. He's still not that old in the world of football, is Bellerin, no. Still around sort of the 26 mark. So yeah, I'd like to see that happen, but I still think another club, maybe Atletico Madrid, might sort of entertain a swap deal with Trippier if it's true that Trippier really is pushing for a move back to the UK. But we'd have to wait and see. I certainly think that Betis, provided they can get the funds together, that'd be an excellent move, because losing Emerson Royale was always going to be tricky. And if they can get some extra support down that right side, then yeah, let's see what they can do. But I'd also like to add, I'm excited to see Valencia this season. I want to see how Jose Bordalas can get on there. I mean, if ever there was a great first game, they obviously played at Getafe in their opening fixture. 1-0 win with both cards getting red cards. If that's like Bordalas's imprint over both the sides there. So there's two children going at it. I mean, I think that was sort of a wonderful moment. I'd love to see Los Che kind of push up the table a little bit. They still got Yunus Musa. Obviously, Gaia's still knocking around at the club as well. So yeah, hopefully this can be the season for them to put together a decent campaign. And I think Bordalas might be a step up. Maybe add that bit of an edge that the previous kind of management there necessarily didn't have. So yeah, I'm excited to see Los Che down this season too.
Yeah, how is Gaia still there? That's absolutely mental. Yeah, Valencia, always worth keeping an eye on. It's always absolute chaos down there. But guys, that is our first part of our show on La Liga. Let us know who you guys think is going to win the title, who's going to be the best signing, what you make of the Seville, situation as well. Do you think Sevilla have a chance of finishing in the top 3, etc.? Answer all those questions in the comments down below. And let's move on to our big match preview. Right, for our big match preview this weekend, we were actually spoiled for choice. We could have talked about RB Leipzig versus Stuttgart, which is going on tonight, Friday night that is. Leverkusen versus Gladbach, Athletic Club versus Barcelona, and Nice versus Marseille. Obviously, Nice thrashing Lille last weekend. Christophe Galtier, I was about to say getting revenge. It's not really getting revenge, just putting one over his old club. But with Serie A returning this weekend and with Jack in the building, big Fiorentina fan, we've decided to focus on the biggest clash in Italy this weekend, which sees Roma, the Giallorossi, take on Fiorentina. Henry, Roma, it feels like they've obviously made a big statement in the managerial market. They've signed a big striker. The pressure is kind of on them this year to improve.
Oh, listen, you all know how much I love Jose Mourinho. I know how much I want him to succeed. I want him to succeed so bad. I've been loving his social media during his time at Roma so far. There's that video of him like throwing a javelin. He looks like he's really buying into it, and I think this could be one of the most intriguing challenges in his career so far. And like you say, lots of pressure because we're not quite sure what's the state of play in Serie A at the moment. And if we look at Roma, what he maybe needs to improve on, they finished 7th last year, 16 points behind 4th place Juventus. Really sort of dropped off in the latter stages of the Fonseca managerial time there. Lots of rumours he was going to get. They wanted to sort of let him go earlier than they actually did, but they sort of let him run out his contract. It was never looking like he was going to extend there. They conceded 58 goals. That's the 10th best in Serie A and just one fewer than 16th place Cagliari. So he really struggled to coach a defence, and maybe that's what they've seen in Mourinho, a bit more robust at the back there. And also, I think what they'll want to do is convert that big game mentality, because they struggled against the big boys, didn't they? 4-0 lost to Napoli, 4-1 to Atalanta, 3-0 versus Lazio, and 3-1 versus Inter Milan. Every time they were gaining a bit of momentum in the league, sort of beating the teams they were expected to, it kind of got derailed a little bit, and then they sort of had to build up again. But if we look at what they've gone and done, their summer business, really intriguing. I love this Tammy Abraham move. I think he's obviously going to have to get settled. I'm not sure he ever imagined he'd be moving to Roma at the start of the summer, but so that's the beauty of the sort of the transfer window. It sort of throws up these moves sometimes, and he's certainly a step up on Eldor Shomurodov, who's the other forward that they bought in from Genoa. So had a bit of not the greatest record there, and even before that at FC Rostov over in Russia, he hardly scored, but he's pretty handy for the Uzbekistan national side. So I'm going to give him a bit of time to develop. And I saw him score recently.
Although I will say, like, who do Uzbekistan play regularly? Maybe that's just being a bit rude.
Maybe.
He's quite fun. He's quite fun, you know. I watched him. He played a bit at the end of Genoa's season, and he's like a tall, gangly man who has really good feet. It's really strange. Yeah. It's like he's a bit of an odd player to watch. He's a little bit like Sasa Kalajic, you know, over in the Bundesliga. That kind of mold of player, and
that Crouch school of thought.
Yeah, but he's really, really interesting. I like the fact that he's a backup. I like the fact that he's not going to be leading this Roma line. But I am intrigued as to what he can bring to the table.
All right. I mean, it seems peculiar that they would sign him and Abraham for the money they have, considering how close they came to sort of meeting Arsenal's demands for Granit Xhaka, but then sort of stepping back at the last moment with that deal too. They've also brought in Matias Vigna, Rui Patricio in goal, who I really like that addition there. I think an upgrade on Paul Lopez, who I think was sort of people were running out of patience with him, weren't they, over at the Stadio Olimpico? And also Roger Ibanez's move from Atalanta, that's been made permanent too. They've got a lot of exciting players running through that side. I'm excited to see Abraham link up with the likes of Lorenzo Pellegrini. I think he's going to be really effective with Nicolo Zaniolo as well. And I think they've managed to sort of move on some of the players that may be holding them back in recent times, in Cengiz Ünder and Justin Kluivert. It hasn't quite worked out for him, has it? He's left on loan too. Obviously, Dzeko's gone to Inter Milan in a move I think we've dubbed one of the dullest moves you'll see this transfer window, isn't it? It's sort of an element of massive predictability about that. But let's look at Tammy Abraham's numbers, what he could bring to the table. He scored 30 goals in 82 games for Chelsea. He's a really competent goal scorer. He's got 0.6 XG per 90. That's very similar to Dzeko, and he sort of operates in a similar style. So if they can replicate some kind of the link up that they had there, the way that Mkhitaryan and Pedro are running off him, then I'm excited to see how that could work. Obviously, they've got Borja Mayoral for another season too, who I think's been brilliant since he's gone on loan there. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Roma to kind of show what they can do this season. I think 100 million euros is a big investment. They're supporting Mourinho, and I think if you look at, I don't think it's as doom and gloom for Inter Milan as a lot of people are making it out to be. I think some of their replacements in the market have been pretty effective. Napoli, I'm interested to see what they can do under sort of new management this time around. There is an opening for them to really make a charge at that top four, so I really hope that Mourinho can mould some kind of a rigidity to this Roma side and really push them over the line. But yeah, I'm backing them to do well. I certainly think backing them to do well in this opening game against Fiorentina. But you never know with Mourinho. Only time will tell what he's got up his sleeve.
Yeah, it feels a bit like the Bundesliga in that so many of the top clubs in Serie A have changed manager. Obviously, Spalletti's now at Napoli, Sarri's at Lazio, Allegri's gone back to Juve, etc. Inzaghi's now at Inter Milan. Like, no one really knows what's going to happen. I think most people say Max Allegri's Juve are probably favourites for the title, but below that, it's a bit of a mismatch. Speaking of mismatches, let's talk about Fiorentina, Jack, because it's been a strange few years for Fiorentina. From that sort of the team I remember in the 90s, 2000s, it seems a long way away from that at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It hasn't been glory times for a long time at the franchise, so it's a funny one. I quite like how they've gone about their business summit. It started off in vintage Fiorentina chaos with employing Gennaro Gattuso for approximately 16 days before he decided to leave his new manager role because of arguments with the board over new signings. And basically the fact that he wasn't allowed to just use Jorge Mendes for everything. And that was basically the board were like, no, we're not having that, and he just walked out of the job. But I actually really like that they've brought in Vincenzo Italiano. I think this is a good managerial appointment. I really liked what he did with Spezia last year. I think a lot of people thought that Spezia would be relegated, and he really turned them into a very difficult to beat side, I think, and really pushed them up the table towards relative safety relatively comfortably towards the end of things. And I'm interested to see how he works with this Fiorentina side, because I think that tactically it fits. We saw last year, at least until Prandelli came in towards the end of the season, that Fiorentina were absolutely adamant that they were going to cross 50 times a game. And it didn't really work. And without the kind of goal threat and just ability to kind of force the ball over the line at times that Dusan Vlahovic brought, Fiorentina would have been in real trouble, like real trouble. And I think that it was only towards the end of the campaign that they started to breeze a little bit further away from that relegation zone. But this is a side that I think has the potential to kick on quite heavily. I think there's something to be said for the fact that the Nicolas Gonzalez, who I think is another wonderful signing, brilliant again at the Copa America for Argentina, really did kind of get up and down that line so well, and basically was the foil to Messi on the other side. His work rate was absolutely exceptional. This is quite a big squad, and I think that maybe it's probably important to say at this time that I'm quite comfortable suggesting that I think Fiorentina will push for 7th, 8th from
really?
where they finished.
Love it.
I also love this matchup, and these are the two teams that I'm most excited about in Serie A this season. I've got Roma getting a Champions League spot in my predictions for the season. Ooh. So I reckon both of these sides are on for a campaign that kicks on. But you actually look at the depth in this midfield for Fiorentina, and Sofian Amrabat has been really impressive. Eric Pulgar, I think, is the kind of player who Italiano will absolutely love. He will just monster around in the middle. He eats up yards. And then in front of him, Gaetano Castrovilli, Marco Benassi looks like he might be having a little bit of a renaissance. Jack Bonaventura and Yusuf Male was brought in this year as well. So there's a lot going on.
Well, that is some serious depth, actually, yeah.
Yeah, and that's not even talking about Ricardo Sapinara, who is still somehow kicking about. I have no idea how, why, what, where, or who, but he is still somehow playing football for Fiorentina. So that's exciting. And then, the front three, if it stays the same, is Nicolas Gonzalez, Jose Callejon, and Dusan Vlahovic. Now, behind that, there's not huge amounts of depth. And obviously, if Vlahovic leaves, then Fiorentina are going to be in big trouble, because it's very difficult to replace a player of that caliber.
Jack, sorry to interrupt. Sorry to put you on the spot as well. Do you have any idea who Fiorentina could sign with 12, 13 days left of the window if they got 70 million euros? I
would imagine that what they will do is go in quite hard for Belotti.
Okay, yeah.
That would be my guess as to what Fiorentina do with it. Whether that's a good thing or not is a different question. And I'm not sure that Belotti is the player that I would look to at this point. But if you do bring in Belotti, it's a bit like the Dzeko move, isn't it? What you've done is just brought in an older, slightly less good version of the player that you've brought in, who almost certainly won't score the same amount of goals, but will probably score a fair amount of goals in that position because of the positions you put him in with talented players around him. And Belotti is, for all his faults, a very good goal scorer. And so I think that's what Fiorentina would do. I think that would be the safe bet. So we'll see how that one pans out. But look, there's also the kind of Milenkovic rumours that are starting to spread around. Herman Pezzella, as I said, linked to Betis quite heavily as well. So, that's the club captain, as well as the fact that he's probably one of this central defensive partnership the Italiano was going to start with. So it's difficult to kind of really get a grip on Fiorentina's season until the window closes. And obviously in true Italian style, Serie A hasn't announced when they're going to close their transfer window because that's what they do in Serie A. But it does feel like at the moment and where Fiorentina are sitting right now as we record this, I mean, by the time this goes out, Vlahovic might be at Atleti and we could all be all over the shop. But you actually look at what they've done in pre-season, played 4, won 4, scored 17, haven't conceded. It's been fun, yes, against regional sides, yes, against weaker opposition. But while that's all going on, you've got to beat what's in front of you. And Fiorentina look like they have a style of play and an element of transition about them, especially with Gonzalez out on the wide on the left, that we haven't really seen for a little while with this side. So as they stand right now, I'm excited about this Fiorentina team. You might ask me that question in 2 weeks' time, and we could look at this very, very differently.
Love it. I'm loving the positivity you're bringing. Roma doing well back into the top 4. Fiorentina in the top half for the first time in a little while, I believe. That'd be great to see. In terms of this game, I like to bring the head-to-head stats at the end of this section. Roma have won their last 4 meetings. And get this, Fiorentina have only won 2 of their last 18 with 13 defeats in that time. Now, Henry, it's time for the first prediction on Big Match Preview of the season. What's your scoreline for this one?
Jack, you won't know, but I'm the defending champion of the Predictor League on Continental Club. So it's a great I'm going to kick off with a 2-0 victory for Roma. I think they'll all be wanting to impress Mourinho, sort of stake their claim for a spot in his starting 11. So I'm no disrespect to Fiorentina, but I just think Roma are going to have a bit too much for them in this opening fixture.
Fair enough. Jack, are you backing La Viola?
No, I'm not either. I think it will be 2-1. And also, I'll tell you what's going to happen because Narrative FC wants to get involved. Nice. That Nicola Zaniolo is going to score both goals.
Yes.
Because in 2016, Zaniolo grew up in the Fiorentina Youth Academy. And they let him go. It wasn't even brought out by someone. He was just released by Fiorentina. He went down to Virtus Entella and then on to Inter from there.
Yeah, exactly.
But sometimes you lose a player to another team and you think of it and you go, okay, it's hard to take because we know there's a talent. Someone like a Harvey Elliott for Fulham, and you watched him leave for Liverpool and you're like, that's annoying because we know he's really good. But ultimately, you have to accept sometimes your place in the food chain. Fiorentina let Nicola Zaniolo go. They were just like, no, you're not good enough. And he's probably going to be wearing the 10 shirt for Roma. He's going to inherit Totti's jersey. This is a player who I think is going to be one of Italy's leading lights for the next 10 years. Let go. Absolute shambles. He's scoring both.
That is pretty painful. I saw the stats around Raja Nainggolan's transfer on Twitter the other day about how much he cost Inter Milan per sort of appearance. Obviously Zaniolo going the other way, and this guy was like, who I can't really remember, so I can't give credit to whoever it was. It was just like Nainggolan's got to go down as one of the worst deals in football history for sure. In terms of this game, I'm going to be a bit boring. I'm going to go 1-1 to kick off the season. It's not going to be an absolute thriller, but we'll park that there. Guys, get your predictions in the comments down below. And let's quickly move on to our quick fire question just to wrap up the show. It comes in from EFD favourite Euro Expert. Go check out his content on Twitter. He does fantastic little short videos about who top clubs should sign. And he says, what European underdogs do you see doing well in this season's Champions League, Europa League and the Conference League? So, spread your bets, Henry. Who are you going for? He suggested that we might mention PSV, but I don't know.
Well, we might not. Who knows? It's hard to say because a lot of the qualification process hasn't actually finished. I'm closely following the Monaco Shakhtar Donetsk Champions League qualifier. I think that is whoever comes out there. I'm very excited to see them in the competition. I love what Niko Kovac has done with this Monaco side. Boadu signing didn't start that quickly in Liga in the season, but if they can get over the line in this qualifier against the Ukrainians, they're 1-0 down after the first leg, I should say. I'm excited to see what that happened there. And then beyond that, I'm excited to see how Marseille are going to do under Sampaoli. I think they fluffed a 2-0 lead their most recent fixture, but they look quite exciting again. Payet looks like he's got the bit between his teeth. And also, I'll just quickly for the Conference League, just because we did the video on that recently, I'm excited. Trabzonspor, the Turkish champions, finally back in European football after that ban. They sort of missed out on their chance to play in sort of a bigger competition. I like their team there. They've brought in Hamšík, Gervinho. They just bought Andreas Cornelius. They've started well in the Turkish Super League. I'm excited to see what they can do, even if it is in the Conference League, which isn't exactly the European competition they wanted to be in, but we love it anyway. I'm excited to see what will happen there.
Love it, Henry. Very good stuff. This actually couldn't be a more perfect question for Jack, considering he is the host of UEFA's Europa League breakfast show. Jack, firstly, when is that show coming back? And who are you most looking forward to seeing in European competition this season?
Well, we're not completely sure when it's going to return, but fingers crossed. Well, we're hoping for the group stage, but maybe it's going to be
Fingers
a knockout
crossed.
only thing. We'll see how we go. But I like a couple of things. I'm really excited about the Conference League. This is, the Europa League is my baby, but there's also this kind of thing now that you've got another one coming in underneath, and I'm like, give me more weird things that I can look at.
New baby.
We released a video about it, about why you should be excited, and it was talking about the teams that are getting the opportunities in Europe that even like an Union Berlin, right, who haven't been in European competition since the early days of the Intertoto Cup in the early 2000s. And their fans finally getting to go back into a European competition, experience it again. I fancy them to give this a good go. I think they're going to drop off in the Bundesliga and really start to shine in this thing. I also have a funny feeling that Celtic are going to lose to AZ Alkmaar in the playoffs for the Europa League and then go deep in the Europa Conference. That's where I'm at with Celtic.
Nice. Chris Hamill will be loving that.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I think that Postecoglou was a brilliant appointment at Celtic. I love the fact that they've brought in a coach who actually tries to improve players. Obviously, Kyogo Furuhashi, or King Kyogo as we're calling him, is obviously someone who's going to light this up. He's unbelievable. And I think the Celtic might take a little while to get going, which is why I'm not hugely backing them to get through this playoff game. But I think once they do, they're going to be quite a tough team to stop. And so therefore, I'm quite excited about if they do end up in the Conference League, how far they could actually drive that. The other one is Bøtter Glimt, right? Who obviously the champions of Norway. And I just have a feeling that they're going to have an impressive little stint here as well in the Conference League. I'm excited about people getting to see them a little bit more. Obviously, a lot of players that have come out of there, and we've spoken about, I'm sure you've spoken about on here, Jens Petter Hauge, who I absolutely love. They've brought through so many wonderful talents, and it's also this kind of very tight-knit niche community, and a lot of the players are from the local area. It's a lovely kind of story, the whole Bøtter Glimt story, so well worth checking out. But I have a feeling that they're going to do some damage in Europe as well this year.
I love it. That is exactly why we asked Jack Collins on for Bøtter Glimt shouts in this section. That is absolutely perfect. And we will be getting on future experts as well. So, that's a good point, actually. Let us know in the comment section who you want us to see from the non-FD universe to come onto Continental Club and drop knowledge bombs like Jack has done throughout this show. In terms of my one prediction for European competition, I'm going Napoli to win the Europa League. I've just got a weird feeling about it. Don't have a great record in European competition, but I just got a really weird feeling about it. I think they've got a really strong front line. Victor Osimhen's hopefully going to be fully fit for the entire year. Really nice amount of goals coming from midfield as well. I've just got a feeling Napoli to win the Europa League. But guys, that's all we've got time for on Continental Club for this week. Thank you very much to Henry Hill as ever, but a special thank you to Jack Collins. Jack, thank you very much for coming on the show. Where can the good people of Football Daily and Euro Football Daily find you?
Thank you for having me, first and foremost. I've loved this. I've loved chatting to you both, and it's been really fun. So honestly, thank you so much. I'm on Twitter at Jack J Collins, and follow the Ranks FC podcast, and we're there on YouTube as well. If for Ranks FC, there's little bits of snippets from the pod every single week on there, and we kick on a little bit, and there's more to be found on the actual pod itself.
Absolutely, it's well worth a listen. It's my tune of my running as well, along with the Athletic podcast. I listen to Ranks FC and Jack and Dean and Sam spitting bars on there. It's great listen, so go check that out. Henry, if they've enjoyed this video and they want to stay in the FD universe, what should they go watch?
Not just the FD, the EFD universe. That's where we want to keep
specific.
You.
Yeah, nice.
I've just released and explained on Can La Liga Survivor about Messi. So if you, like me, love the kind of the numbers behind football, sort of the business deals going on behind the scenes, I had a really good look at sort of all the TV right and media deals that La Liga have been thrashing out to prepare for this moment. Basically, it's a homage to Javier Tebas and his preparation that he's put in for this moment, which was coming, that Messi was going to leave eventually. I think people need to get their heads around the fact that he was going to leave eventually. La Liga had a plan in place for when that eventuality came to. It's had to be accelerated a little bit. But if you're interested in all that kind of stuff, go check out this Latest Explained, great edit by Danny Pape as well. Always one of the best. And yeah, I really enjoyed writing it. Hopefully you guys find it interesting too.
Oh, nice. You're trying to push yourself out as FD's economist.
Yes.
I love it. You know, king of the dodgy deal, Henry Hill. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Thanks to Jack again, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.